What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. I'm Mike Tagliere, here with you for another Sunday. It's week 13. I don't even know what else to say at this point. I mean, we're here. We've made it through. We are dealing with the injuries as they pop up. We are dealing with COVID. We are dealing with whatever else can pop up for the remainder of 2020. But the good news is that we only have a couple more weeks of 2020, so that's cool. But yeah, thank you guys for showing up again for another Sunday morning live stream because if you weren't here, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. If you guys haven't yet, click the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So what we're going to do is what we typically do. I'm going to run through the injuries for those who have not had a chance to kind of keep up with the injuries this week. It's not a long list, but there's some big names you need to know about. And then there's a lot of guys that are borderline that you're probably going to be asking about because you're not sure whether or not you should start them. And so we'll try and talk through it. I've told you guys before on the show, sometimes talking to you guys actually helps me adjust my rankings on the fly and, kind of figure out the players that I want to rank higher than others. So let me run through the injuries real quick that you guys need to know about. Josh Jacobs, out, not going to play. Devontae Booker is going to take his place. I think I have Devontae Booker ranked as the number 14 or 15 running back this week against the Jets. The Jets typically face about 29 running back touches per game. That's a lot. Jalen Richard's going to have a role. I would anticipate Richard to have, maybe 8 touches in this game. So Booker should be 18 plus touches. That's my expectation. Strong RB2. Kenny Golladay out again. No surprise there. Jonnu Smith was announced as out 2 days ago. I think it was on Friday. So he's out for this game. Alexander Mattison had an appendectomy. He is out for this game, which means Mike Boone will be the backup to Dalvin Cook and probably get himself, 8 to 10 touches in this game against the Jaguars. The questionable list is kind of long. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He doesn't play until tonight. They're calling him a game time decision. He's had a stomach illness for the past few days, missed practice. They're saying they want to see how he does pregame before committing to him playing. So that's one that has me torn, guys. I'm not even going to lie about it. I've dropped him in the rankings because of that. I don't know how far I'm going to drop him, but it's definitely worrisome if you don't have maybe a Le'Veon Bell to plug in his place. Julio Jones seems like he should play. He's expected to take the field with the Falcons today, which is good. Lamar Jackson is expected to come off the COVID list tomorrow and be active for the game on Tuesday. But again, there's some question marks there, especially with Mark Andrews. Like the COVID protocol, they're not forced to tell us if somebody had COVID. They're just on the COVID list. They could have been in close contact. We don't know. But all we know is that Lamar Jackson is expected to play, whereas Mark Andrews, not so much. Same thing with James Conner. He's not expected to play tomorrow for the Steelers. We don't have there's nothing 100% locked in, but that's what we're expecting. Todd Gurley expected to play. DeAndre Swift is not expected to play. He was listed as doubtful, downgraded. So clearly that concussion, whatever he's been dealing with, has been affecting him. So Kerryon Johnson, I'm assuming, takes the lead role for the Lions this week. Yes, Adrian Peterson stole some goal line work on Thanksgiving, but it was goal line work. And if he didn't score touchdowns, he would have been pretty weak. So yeah, Kerryon's the one I would expect to have more value this week. Phillip Lindsay expected to play, which is kind of a miraculous turnaround. Daniel Jones not expected to play. Colt McCoy is going to start in his place. And then Savon Ahmed is not expected to play. So also, I guess I probably should let you know that Ryan Fitzpatrick is not supposed to start now for the Dolphins. It's going to be Tua, which kind of stinks for Devontae Parker. I lowered Parker in my rankings because of that. With Tua under center, they're averaging just, I think, 26 or 28 pass attempts per game, whereas Ryan Fitzpatrick is throwing the ball 30-plus times every time. So, yeah, so that's basically the injuries I wanted to cover. And so we'll get into your guys' questions. And, again, I'll answer as many as I can for the next hour. And if you guys could do me a big favor, though, and narrow it down to 2 or 3 players, because if there's more than that, it's going to take too long for me to kind of talk through your question. I'm not going to get to as many people as I wanted to. So basically just keep it to 2 or 3 players, a tough decision that you're trying to narrow it down to, and we'll go from there. So let's see. Diego asked Myles Gaskin or Raheem Mostert in standard. I'm going to go with Raheem Mostert here. The 49ers backs behind him are kind of dinged up. We don't know how healthy they are. It's a decent matchup for him against the Bills. The Bills do a lot of ever since Sean McDermott became the head coach, the Bills are basically allowing a rushing touchdown a game, which is well above the league average. So I would play Mostert here. Gaskin's got a good matchup. Yes. It seems like only him and Patrick Laird are going to be the only running backs active for the Dolphins, but he is coming off the MCL sprain, and we don't know how healthy he is. It seems like he should be good to go. I'm playing him in some places, but there's enough risk there to me to say, let's just go with Mostert. At least we know that Mostert's healthy. He's going to get the touches against Buffalo. So I'd go Mostert over Gaskin, even though Gaskin is a fine start. Ricky asks, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, or Mostert half PPR flex? I'd play Keenan Allen. I don't think I could bench him right now. I mean, the targets he's getting, it's just ridiculous. And he goes into the slot about 55% of the time, which means that Stephon Gilmore probably isn't going to shadow him. Stephon Gilmore doesn't go into the slot very much. And when Stephon Gilmore does go into the slot, he gets beat real bad. I don't think many people realize just how difficult the slot is for a cornerback, a guy that typically plays in the perimeter, because what those guys do, they're able to use the sideline to their advantage. They're able to press them on the line of scrimmage. They can tilt coverage, basically bracket someone, where when you're in the slot, you don't have that. The wide receiver has any route that they can go. There's no tilting a safety because you have no idea which way the receiver is going. You don't know which side of the field he's going to be headed towards. It's a lot more difficult to match up with a wide receiver in a slot. And again, Stephon Gilmore would not have that sideline to use to his advantage. So I'm not really too worried about Keenan Allen this week. I would play him over those guys. Diggs against San Francisco, tough matchup. Mostert, I like Mostert, but I wouldn't play him over Keenan. Let's see. Chad asked, Frank Gore or Ezekiel Elliott, full PPR. I can't believe I even need to ask this. Yeah, I believe me, it's frustrating for sure. I'd still play Zeke here. Baltimore is not healthy completely. I don't know if Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell are going to be playing this game. We don't have news on a whole lot in this game, being that they just played on Wednesday and the game's happening on Tuesday. This whole schedule's messed up everything, so we really don't have a whole lot of information on that game just yet. But I don't anticipate them being with both of those guys. And if they're both out, Baltimore's run defense, that's where you kind of got to attack them. So Zeke remains in the RB2 conversation. Gore is like a high-end RB3 for me this week. I think he is a solid play, but I would still play Zeke over him. Noah asked, Myles Gaskin or Wayne Gallman, full PPR. This is a good one. I would go Gaskin here just because of the matchup. And the only reason that I feel a little bit better about Myles Gaskin this week than I probably would if, DeAndre Washington and Matt Breida were active, because that's the thing. They didn't bring up another running back as far as I know. So it's going to be just him and Patrick Laird as the two running backs that are healthy on the roster. So therefore, it's like, I don't know if I see a situation where he doesn't touch the ball at least 15 times. And against the Bengals defense, that's obviously a good thing. A team that's allowing basically 5 yards per carry. So I do anticipate him having a workhorse role. Wayne Gallman's been so good, even in tough matchups. And this matchup is not great against Seattle. That's going to be a negative game script. Colt McCoy, that's the part where I worry about. I just don't know if this offense is going to have as many scoring opportunities with Colt McCoy under center. So that's my concern with Gallman, enough to move him just below Gaskin. Julian, as Raheem Mostert, Justin Jefferson, or Gaskin, that one's tough. I like Justin Jefferson quite a bit. I have Jefferson as a top 12 wide receiver, if I'm not mistaken, this week. A solid play. There's a little bit more risk. So if you're looking for upside, like if you're okay with taking on some risk, I think Jefferson's the play here. But if you're more like, hey, I just don't want to screw up this decision, I want to have a floor, and you still do get some ceiling, I'd probably go with Mostert. But it's really close. Good morning, Richard. Big Ben or Kirk Cousins? This one, I am going with Kirk Cousins. And I'm going with Cousins for a few reasons. One, Ben Roethlisberger has not practiced all week, which, whatever. The week that he was dealing with the whole COVID thing and he was like away from the team, he didn't have COVID, but he was away from the team all week. He came back and he threw for he threw quite a bit. He scored a lot of fantasy points that week. It was fine. I'm not worried about that, but it is something. Washington's pass rush is really dang good. The Steelers are coming on a short week. That team has just been through so much, and they're set up for kind of a letdown at some point. They still are undefeated. And then you go back to Cousins, and it's on the flip side. Dalvin Cook is a little dinged up where he's playing through an ankle injury. He was limited in practice throughout the week. Now Alexander Madison, he's out with an appendectomy, so it's like, are they going to run the ball as much as they typically do? I don't think so. Jacksonville, you can attack them in multiple ways, and Jacksonville is down their top two cornerbacks. Sidney Jones and C.J. Henderson are both out for the Jags, so, I mean, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson should have a field day, so I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins there. Let's see, Karen asks, which defense? I have Rams or pick up the Packers. I have them both in the same territory, honestly. Defenses are so hit or miss. I don't put too much thought into them because like it's a mind-numbing exercise that you just don't feel great about. I will tell you who I have higher in my rankings. So let me move these over here. Defense. I want to say it's the Packers. Yep, I have the Packers a couple spots higher. just because Carson Wentz has struggled so much. He holds onto the ball too long, and even though the Packers' pass rush hasn't been great, he holds onto the ball long enough to the point where, yeah, they should be able to get to him a couple times, maybe force a couple turnovers. And then Kyler Murray, he practiced in full, so I mean, it seems like he's getting healthier. Let's see, Jake, in full PPR, would you put DJ Chark, Tyler Boyd, or Damian Harris in the flex? So Damian Harris in the PPR it's brutal, man. It's basically touchdown or bust. I talked about this on the podcast that if Damian Harris, think about it this way. If Damian Harris gets 18 carries, that's fantastic, right? 18 carries is massive for a running back. However, 18 carries, let's say he averages, let's call it 5 yards per carry. Okay, 5 yards per carry. That is like near the league leaders, right? Okay, that's 90 yards. That's what you're getting out of him. 90 rushing yards. He doesn't catch any passes. I think he's been targeted like 3 times all year. It's ridiculous. So basically, if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're left with 9 points in a PPR format, which is not good out of a running back. That's why I cannot suggest him in a PPR. I would play DJ Chark and take a little bit of risk, just for that upside, because I think DJ Chark in that matchup against Minnesota, you can beat those cornerbacks. He can beat those cornerbacks. This could be a big week for DJ Chark. I put him in the high-end wide receiver 3 territory, and I said that he has top 12 upside this week. I play Chark. Travis asked Matt Ryan or Taysom Hill. I would play Taysom Hill. We already saw this matchup. We saw Taysom Hill against this Atlanta defense. We saw him complete 19 of 23 passes or whatever it was. He rushed for 2 touchdowns, yada, yada. We saw that. And then we saw the Broncos game, and he rushed for 2 touchdowns, and people are like, wasn't the passer he was against Atlanta. That game was weird. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. The Broncos didn't have their quarterbacks. It was a very boring game plan for the Saints. They didn't really have to do anything, just run the ball over and over and over and over and over again. It's not the same against Atlanta. I do think that he's going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. So I do have Taysom Hill as a very safe play this week. It helps Matt Ryan to know that Julio's back, but no, I'd go Taysom Hill. It's a high floor. And if Matt Ryan's having a big game, Taysom Hill's going to have a big game. If Matt Ryan's having a bad game, that doesn't mean that Taysom Hill's having a bad game. So I'm going to take the best of both worlds there and play Taysom Hill. Rambin, David Johnson, or J.K. Dobbins, or Devontae Booker for flex. So David Johnson is not the answer. David Johnson playing in Indianapolis, that's a tough matchup. J.K. Dobbins is probably the correct answer here, I think. It's a tough one though, because Booker's the safer play. Dobbins coming off the COVID list, we don't know how they're going to treat him. We don't know if he has that workhorse role, but what we do know is that teams run the crap out of the ball on Dallas. So even if he doesn't have the workhorse role that he had back in week 11, I'm getting the weeks all confused right now. But even if he doesn't go back to that workload, I still think that he's going to receive, let's call it half the touches. That would be fine. I have him ranked as the RB11. Where I have Booker as 15. So I would play J.K. Dobbins in that matchup against Dallas. It's just too good of a matchup to pass up, I think. Let's see. Ricardo, please pick 3. Julio, Jacoby, Latavius, Jonathan Taylor. I'm playing Julio. I'm not worried about him. Julio Jones, so here's the deal. He is a veteran wide receiver. This team is going nowhere. The Atlanta Falcons are not making the playoffs. They're not going anywhere. Julio Jones has hurt his hamstring 3 different times this year. Julio Jones would not be coming back to play if he was not okay. He would not. There's nothing to gain for him to do that. So if Julio's on the field, you play him, and he's playing. So as long as he's playing, unless something happens where they say he's inactive, but I think he's playing. Jonathan Taylor, I would play him this week. Taylor, I've moved up. I want to rank Taylor as like a top 10 running back, but I can't. You can't go all in on a Colts running back just because we know how Frank Reich operates. But I do love Jonathan Taylor this week, and I don't say that very often. And then you come back to Jacoby or Latavius, and this is tough. I don't like Latavius Murray as much as some do this week. Some people like him as like an RB2, and they think that he's worth just as much, if not more, than Alvin Kamara with Taysom Hill under center. I don't think that's the case. I think last week was more of like keep Kamara fresh. Let Latavius have his day. There was no competition on the other side of the ball. So Atlanta has allowed the fewest fantasy points on the ground to running backs this year. On the ground. So Latavius Murray, not a big pass catcher. We obviously know that Taysom Hill's not targeting running backs a whole lot in the passing game. So if he doesn't score, he's going to bust. I'm not a big fan of him this week, so I guess I'll take my chances with Jacoby. Let's see. Montgomery or Gibson, full PPR. I would play David Montgomery. I think Gibson can set up to be a bust this week. And It's not because he's not a good running back. It's because he's playing Pittsburgh. He's playing Pittsburgh in what should be a negative game script. If they fall behind, that's when you see a lot more J.D. McKissic. We haven't seen that recently, right? Like, they've been in a lot of games where they've been ahead or very, very competitive, and that's why you've seen a whole bunch of Antonio Gibson, where we still know that he's a guy that when they fall behind, J.D. McKissic is on the field more than half the time, and that's worrisome for his projection. And on top of that, the Steelers, going back to the start of last year, we're talking about a span of 27 games now. The Steelers have allowed one top 12 running back performance. That's crazy. That's the definition of actually a defense you don't want to play running backs against if you can help it, especially ones that are in a timeshare like that. All right, let's see. Corey Scott, pick one PPR, Allen Lazard, Zach Moss, or Marquise Brown. Right now I'm leaning Brown with the matchup. Yeah, I'd go with Marquise Brown. Zach Moss's matchup against San Francisco is terrible. They've been, a top 3 run defense this year in terms of yards per carry. There's not going to be a whole lot of scoring opportunities, I wouldn't think, for him. And if there is goal line opportunities, Josh Allen can get some of those. So it's not a very good projection for him. Allen Lazard, Philadelphia is a better pass defense than people have made them out to be. And like we just saw Tyler Lockett, the slot-heavy wide receiver, get kind of tied down by Nickel Roby-Coleman, and that's who Lazard's going to see most of the day. So it's not a great matchup for Lazard. Not terrible, but not great. Marquise Brown, he's been a disappointment this year. No one's going to argue that point. But if you were to dial back expectations and say, hey, I just drafted him as a bench wide receiver, hoping that he gets some targets, kind of like we did last year, then you wouldn't be so mad about it because he's still getting targets. He's still finishing with some yardage. Like, there's been a few busts in there for sure, but the matchup against Dallas is just so dang good. I would go with Marquise Brown. Kathy asks, Mike Williams, Kiki QT, or Jerry Jeudy in a half PPR. This one's tough because Mike Williams is probably going to get Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore has been beatable this year, and Mike Williams is the type of guy that can go over anybody and score a touchdown. That's why it's really tough for me to say that I don't like Mike Williams a whole lot. And it's possible that they don't even shadow, that they just kind of play sides because Gilmore isn't going to shadow Keenan Allen. But there's a lot of ifs with that one, right? But Justin Herbert, well, we know he's been on fire. New England has allowed the most yards per pass attempt in football. That's a good thing, right? So it helps Mike Williams. QT, I'd rather wait. QT's matchup this week against Indianapolis, not a really great one. He could see targets, and that's something we want to see. I would prefer to see his role in this offense without Will Fuller than to play him, in a game that means so much, in week 13. I'm sure a lot of you guys are trying to fight for the playoffs, and that's the thing is you don't want to do that. You want to see the role before you trust it. So I'm not really interested in playing QT so much this week. I would prefer to see his role. His matchup next week is one that we're going to target against the Bears. They're playing the Bears next week. Buster screen in the slot. If he still plays that slot role and he's still getting and he gets targets, then next week you can trust him. But this week I'd probably try and stay away just to see what happens. Jerry Jeudy, not a good matchup against Kansas City. I've talked about that in the fact that Kansas City has been one of the best defenses in the league against wide receivers over the last 2 years, but nobody really thinks that. Everybody thinks, they're playing the Chiefs and they're going to fall behind and they're going to see a lot of pass attempts and this and that. Well, the Chiefs have been dominating everybody. That's all true. But wide receivers have totaled the fewest yardage against the Chiefs since the start of last year. That just kind of goes to show you that it's a bad narrative. It's not a good one. And Jerry Jeudy, we can't pretend that he's been so consistent. Drew Lock, not been consistent. There's just a lot of question marks there. I'd play Mike Williams and hope for the best. Let's see, Gavin, I need RB2 and flex, full PPR. All right, there's 4 people. I gotta pass that one up. GH's 96, full PPR flex. Kirk, Akers, Mims. I don't like Kirk this week very much at all. Akers, so hit or miss with that freaking backfield. You don't know if he's taking it over or not. Oh, man. In a full PPR, I guess I'll go with Mims just because it is PPR. Akers has 3 targets on the season. That's it. So if he basically doesn't score, you're kind of screwed. And then Denzel Mims, he's had at least 8 targets in 3 straight games. He's totaled at least 62 yards in 3 straight games. So the matchup with the Raiders is a good one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be without one of their starting cornerbacks this week. I think Damon Arnett is out with a concussion, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if I saw the news on that. But I knew he was very, very questionable. So I would go with Mims, I guess. Don't feel great. Joshua Pick 2, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, and Deontay Johnson, half PPR. Give me the running backs. So the Washington football team has been really tough against wide receivers. They've allowed the third fewest points to wide receivers this year. A lot of it comes down to the fact that they haven't seen a whole lot of volume, but that's basically Washington games. It's just not very high volume games. Deontay Johnson's someone that's been reliant upon volume. His yards per target is not particularly good. He's a wide receiver, so you have to worry about those targets. He's more of like a guaranteed guy, but at the same time, Dobbins and Taylor, those guys are locked into over a dozen touches. So I'd play the running backs there. James, good morning. Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, or Deontay Johnson? I have anxiety. I'd play Michael Thomas. We saw the one game that Michael Thomas was, Michael Thomas was against the Falcons just a couple weeks ago, and they don't have the talent to stop Michael Thomas. So if the Saints want to run the exact same game plan, they can do that, and Michael Thomas is going to be just fine. I'm playing Michael Thomas. I have him as a top 10 wide receiver. I know that I'm not with the consensus on that, and I'm fine with it. This matchup is just too good against Atlanta. I can't pass it up. Let's see. Devontae Parker, Devontae Booker, or Benny Snell. I would go with Devontae Booker of those. Parker got downgraded in my rankings a little bit when we heard that Tua was starting, because again, they just don't throw the ball a whole lot. We haven't seen the chemistry between Tua and Devontae Parker nearly as much as we've seen it with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I have moved Devontae Parker down. I don't know how far I'm going to go, but I'm thinking like low end wide receiver 2. I'm not going to like completely cross him off in a good matchup, but Booker 15, probably I would say 18 touches for Devontae Booker. That's what I'd be expecting. So I like him. Let's see. Dominic asked Pittman, Chark, Hollywood Brown, pick 2. Chark is 1 and Pittman's the other. I like Hollywood Brown this week, but I wouldn't play him over those guys. Pittman, coming off a 9-target game, I know that he was disappointing in that game, to say the least, but this matchup against Houston, it just keeps getting better. This was already a team that you could attack with wide receivers, and then they ended up losing Bradley Roby for the rest of the year. He got suspended. So they lost their top cornerback, so it's a great matchup, and I would play him over Hollywood this week. Hollywood is just like you're looking for that big play, and Dallas has allowed them, but Pittman's just more in line with – he gets more opportunities to do that in a better offense. Let's see. Joe asked Trubisky or Newton. They're so close in my rankings, to be honest with you. I know some people are talking about the Bears splits, or Mitch Trubisky, I should say. Mitch Trubisky's splits versus Detroit compared to everybody else, and I've done that too. But I also said that what you have to understand is that now Matt Patricia is gone, that can change some things, right? If you look at the Falcons, that defense, it got better once they fired Dan Quinn, which is really weird, right? Dan Quinn was supposed to be the defensive-minded guy, but Raheem Morris taken over. It's gotten better. I wonder if that similar thing happens with Detroit. But the thing is, I don't know if they have the talent. Desmond Trufant on IR. Jeffrey Okuda's out for this game, so they're down their top 2 cornerbacks. That's the part where it's like, do they have the talent to do it? I don't know. So, I mean, Cam has been playing like crap. I guess I'd go with Trubisky. Man. Oh, that's so tough. You know what? I'm going to look at my rankings. I'm just going to give you my ranking, and I'll let you do what you want with it. I have Newton at 16, Mitch at 17. So it goes to show. That's why I'm torn on it. The reason that you have to worry about Trubisky is a little bit is because he can get benched in the middle of the game. That's the thing. Can Cam Newton? We saw him get benched, but it was in the fourth quarter. Cam was also limited in practice this week. I'm going to go Trubisky. I think I might change that in my rankings just because there's obviously risk with both players. Cam is not going to throw really well against the Chargers. That's not going to happen. But if he's a little dinged up and questionable for this game, he may not run as much, which is where he gets his value. So maybe I go Trubisky over Cam Newton. All right. Let's see. Pick 2, Marvin Jones, Benny Snell, or T. Higgins, half PPR. Benny Snell's definitely one. Give me the guaranteed touches. And then T. Higgins or Marvin Jones. Oh, this is tough. They both have bad matchups. T. Higgins with Xavier Howard. That's who I imagine that the Bengals are going to stick on him. He's been a really good cornerback as of late. But then you have Marvin Jones against the Bears. Oh, I mean, he didn't do much in the first meeting against them. The Bears secondary. Oh, this one's tough. I think I have Marvin Jones like 1 or 2 spots higher. but it's so close. I just think the quarterback play is what's going to make me lean Marvin Jones, because I'd rather have Matthew Stafford throwing to my wide receiver than Brandon Allen. Yes, I have Marvin Jones at 32. I have T. Higgins at 36. So not high on either of them, but that's who I'd go. Let's see here. Gross question, but need to start one. Mike Glennon, Mullins, Stafford at quarterback. 6-point touchdowns. I have Fitz, but it looks like Tua will play. Yeah. Man, that's tough. I might go with Glennon, to be honest, and just hope for the best, because what you're hoping for in that game is that Minnesota, they throw up a bunch of points on the board, and that Glennon has to throw a whole lot. He didn't even have Chark last week. He did throw 2 touchdowns. He played better than I thought he would, to be fair. But man, yeah, I'd probably go with Mike Glennon and take my chances. I don't know if there's much upside there with Stafford against the Bears, especially without Galladay. Let's see. Alistair, Trubisky or Rivers? I would still play Rivers over Trubisky. Phillip Rivers, the one thing that I was worried about is that he was actually questionable for this game, missing some practice time. But at the same time, it's against Houston. It's such a good matchup on the ground and through the air. Trubisky, again, the reason I'm going to lean with Rivers here is because it's not because Trubisky doesn't have upside. He does. But the risk of him, if he throws an interception that's like a bad interception, which is definitely possible, he can get pulled during the game. Yeah. Let's see. I was checking to see if there was any news that broke yet. Nothing that popped up just yet. Ross asked, pick one full PPR, Corey Davis, DJ Chark, or Myles Gaskin. Thanks. I would go with Myles Gaskin. I love Chark this week. I really do. In terms of the matchup that he has against Minnesota, but we haven't seen him with Glennon. We don't know how that target distribution is going to work out because Cole is healthy, Chenault's healthy, James Robinson's healthy. There's a lot of different question marks there. Corey Davis got an upgraded matchup. Denzel Ward out. Cool, but that's still a run-first team. Myles Gaskin is the guy that's locked into 15 touches. I'm playing him. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water, but thank you guys again for showing up. I mean, we're not even halfway through yet. Thank you guys so much for the likes. I appreciate it if you take 2 seconds to do that. Subscribe. We greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you. All right, let's see. Nick, Ertz, Burton, or Rudolph? I'd play Kyle Rudolph. Knowing that Irv Smith Jr. is out, I always talk about that. Every time I talk about those guys in the primer, I say that you can't play either of them confidently when they're both in the lineup. However, when one of them is out, you can play the other one, and that's what we saw last week with Kyle Rudolph. And we've seen it earlier in this year, too, when Irv Smith was out, where Rudolph actually just sees a higher target share. He basically sees what they would see combined. So I would expect 5-6 targets in this game for Rudolph against the Jaguars defense that, well, they can't stop tight ends. So give Ertz a week back. I want to see what his involvement is. Burton, not a bad play, but again, I'd play Rudolph. Chris asked, standard flex, Jefferson, McLaurin, or Jonathan Taylor? Jesus. Why do you have this question? Chris, kudos to you. You have a good team, obviously. But you should have made some trades because this is going to be difficult for you every day. Justin Jefferson, McLaurin, very, very close in the rankings. Jonathan Taylor, I have him up there at RB13, I think. I'm high on Jonathan Taylor this week. In a standard league, I'm going to go with Taylor. If it was PPR, I might lean wide receivers, but I think I'm going to go with Taylor here. The matchup against Houston is just so good. They've allowed, I think it's 200. Let me check it. I'm just going to make sure so I don't sound like a dummy. Okay, it was. So now it's 126 more yards than any other team on the ground of running backs. Houston. We know that Jordan Wilkins got nicked up last week. We don't know if he's going to be playing at 100%. So I would expect Jonathan Taylor to coming back off a week where he didn't play because he was like the close contact or whatever. He should be fresh, ready to go. I like Taylor. Jason asked, PPR league, RB2 spot, Antonio Gibson or Devontae Booker. I have Booker higher, and I know some people are going to give me crap for that, but I have Devontae Booker higher than Antonio Gibson this week. I am worried about Antonio Gibson's matchup, guys. Like I think that he's a fine RB2 play. You just play him because he's been playing so well. But I highlighted this in the primer, and if I don't get to your question at some point during this, I'm sorry. But if I don't, understand the primer is an article I write every single week, and it's like, I think this week was like 36,000 words. where it's got a paragraph on every player, and I write about him, and I write my thoughts on him. And the reason I'm down on Antonio Gibson is because in there it shows the splits when they win and when they lose. Antonio Gibson has like kind of crushed in matchups that Washington wins. If you think that they could hang with the Steelers, cool. Then you play Antonio Gibson and you're fine with it. I don't know if they do. And on top of that, the Steelers are so dang good against the run. Even, when teams have the lead against them, they're good against the run. It's not a team that you really can run the ball very much against. So I'm a little worried about him. Whereas Devontae Booker, the Jets are they're not a bad run defense by any means, but the touches are going to be there for Booker. PPR, Gaskin, Dobbins, or Drake. I have Dobbins the highest here. In a PPR, it did be close between him and Gaskin, but I probably go with Dobbins just because there's more game-breaking potential. Gaskin first week back from a multi-week injury. That's my concern there. Enough for me to probably play Dobbins, but it's close. If you wanted to play Gaskin, I have no issue with it though. Kevin, Ike, Josh Allen or Justin Herbert. Herbert is my choice. Josh Allen has not been the same quarterback without John Brown in the lineup. He hasn't. And now it's like going against San Francisco. Why do we expect that to change? I don't know. I don't get it. This was like me last week. I was not high on Josh Allen against the Chargers. I'm not high on Josh Allen against the 49ers. Herbert in the matchup. The only concern I have for Herbert this week is that there's not going to be enough volume. When teams play against the Patriots, I think they're averaging about 58 plays per game because the Patriots run such a slow-paced offense. So that's the only concern for Herbert, but they do run fast-paced, and I expect them to get over the 60 hump. I would play Herbert here. He's been playing too well. And the Patriots, I write this all the time, is that you're scared more about the reputation of the Patriots defense than you actually are that defense, because that defense has allowed more yards per attempt than any other team in football. They've been terrible when you throw the ball, and Herbert's done a good job with it. So I play Herbert. Jonathan asked, Jacoby Myers, Michael Pittman, or Sterling Shepard. I have Sterling Shepard the highest in a PPR. Shepard, he's not the sexy option. He's not a guy that you're going to play looking for, 25 PPR points or anything like that. But I think he's a guy that he gets 6 targets every single game at least. And he's not a high ceiling guy, but he gives you a floor. And against Seattle, a team that's allowed more wide receivers to finish his top 36 options than any other team in the league. And it's not even close. I like Shepard. Pittman has a bit more upside, but a lower floor. And then Myers with Cam Newton, you just never know what you're going to get. Danny asked, are Boyd and Galladay worth hanging on to for the playoffs? I have plenty of depth, but need safe floor due to Lockett's inconsistency for week 16. The Rams are versus Seattle. Yeah, I would definitely hang on to them. Galladay definitely. Boyd is more like, I could see people letting Boyd go, but I don't want to judge Boyd off one game. Let's see a couple games and see how it is without Joe Burrow, because we've only seen the one, and obviously it was not pretty. But it's the same thing last year when Boyd went to Ryan Finley from Andy Dalton. The first game he busted. Then the second game he did really good against Baltimore, and we were like, whoa. And then the third game I think was like a mediocre game, so it wasn't terrible. So I don't want to write off Boyd just yet. But Galladay I would definitely hold on to for now. Trey, half PPR, Devontae Parker, Deontay Johnson. Will Pittsburgh even play? I think so. And honestly, I would play Deontay Johnson just because Devontae Parker I downgraded. When you have him playing with Tua, has not been nearly as good. It stinks too. The matchup is good, but I'd play Deontay Johnson. Kamara or Deontay Johnson, full PPR. I would play Kamara. Man, I hate that this is where we've gotten to with Alvin Kamara, because he was like the auto start you never had to worry about. But yeah, there's definitely some question marks, but Atlanta should have to throw the ball a little bit more this week. I think it's going to be a few more targets for Alvin Kamara. They have to figure out a way to get him involved in the passing game. So I'm going to go with Kamara. Colin, Myles Gaskin, Chark, David Johnson. All right, so it's not David Johnson. He's out. Myles Gaskin or DJ Chark? I'd probably play Myles Gaskin and take the guaranteed touches. I do like Chark. I've talked about him on the show, obviously, quite a few times. I like him, but at the same time, I can't pass on a running back getting 15-plus touches in a good matchup against the Bengals. Just can't do it. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Dana asked Deontay Johnson or Mostert in the flex, half-point PPR. I'll probably take the guaranteed touches with Mostert over Deontay Johnson. I like Deontay Johnson just fine. He gets double-digit targets basically whenever he's in the lineup, which is good. But against Washington, the volume has not been there for a whole lot of wide receivers. So even if we say, let's cut the difference. Let's say that the Steelers target their receivers a lot. They don't target. Let's meet in the middle, and it's lower target share for the Steelers wide receivers this week. That could eat into Deontay Johnson's production because he's not been particularly efficient in terms of like a yards per target standpoint. And Washington hasn't been a team that's very giving to wide receivers. I mean, I pulled it up. They've allowed the third fewest fantasy points to them, 1.63 PPR points per target. That's bottom 5 in the NFL. So it's not an easy matchup either. So yeah, I'd go with Mostert. All right, let's see. Latavius Murray or Frank Gore half PPR. I'd play Gore. I like the 3-down roll there. I've talked about the Falcons and that they're a much better run defense than people give them credit for on the ground. You need to get it done through the air against them. That's where Alvin Kamara needs to be involved in the passing game somehow, some way. So I'm anticipating Taysom Hill throwing a ball a little bit more, getting there. So Eric Neville, Taysom Hill, or Kyler Murray. I have Taysom Hill higher because I think that there's a similar ceiling for both of them guys. I just think that Taysom's a little safer right now because we don't know if Kyler Murray's 100%. He did practice in full, which makes us feel better about him. But at the same time, he's going into a matchup against the Rams where he's not going to get a whole lot of production through the air. Kyler Murray hasn't been a particularly efficient passer through the air. If you look and you break it down and you say, let's look at Kyler Murray's just passing totals, and you stack him up against everybody else in the league, I think he was like 18th in fantasy points through the air alone. But the rushing totals is where you get your fantasy production from him. And if he's not 100%, if he's not getting those goal line carries that he was, and they're giving him to Kenyon Drake, then, well, that eats into his value. Against the Rams, that's just a tough matchup. So if Kyler Murray finishes as the number 10 quarterback this week, I would say that's actually a good thing for him against that defense. Taysom Hill, on the other hand, we've already seen this matchup against Atlanta. If anything, Atlanta hopefully puts up more points on the board and forces them to throw the ball a little bit more this week. So I like Taysom Hill. I just feel like the floor is very similar to Kyler Murray's, but I think the ceiling is higher because of the matchup. Dan asked, pick 2 half PPR, Kerryon, Laviska Shenault, Sterling Shepard. I would go at Kerryon and Sterling Shepard. So I don't know if it's official yet that DeAndre Swift, has he been ruled out? All right, let's see. Mark Andrews not expected to play. Kind of got that. Julio Jones officially active. Todd Gurley active. Tua. All right. There it is. DeAndre Swift. That's what I was looking for. DeAndre Swift is inactive. He has an illness. So Kerryon Johnson is the one I expect to have the most value against the Bears. I know that Adrian Peterson. And Peterson, for what it's worth, I said I liked Peterson more than Kerryon last week or on Thanksgiving because in terms of the matchup they had against Houston and what Houston allowed in the ground. And that's why I liked Peterson more. This matchup against the Bears, it's more of a mix. I think the Bears, you need to find creative ways to move the ball, not just run the ball with someone like Adrian Peterson because everybody knows what's coming when he's on the field. And the Bears have been a good run defense. I don't know if Akeem Hicks is going to play. I know he was questionable, but that would definitely be a plus. But I'd play Kerryon. I think that he's going to have value. And I'd play Shepard over Laviska Shenault. Sorry, guys. My throat is like not being very friendly to me right now. Let's see. Melvin Gordon or Antonio Gibson. So knowing that Phillip Lindsay is going to play, I would play Gibson and hope for the best. I had Gordon up there. Like I would have played Gordon as a high-end RB2 over Gibson if Phillip Lindsay was out. But it seems like they want to give Phillip Lindsay half the work, and that just eats into the upside for Gordon. Kyle asked Tyler Boyd or Brashad Perriman PPR. I'd play Tyler Boyd still in a PPR. Perriman with Sam Darnold under center hasn't been the same. I broke this down in the primer, and I talked about how Joe Flacco, 19% of his pass attempts were going 20-plus yards down the field, which really helps someone like Brashad Perriman. Whereas someone with like Sam Darnold has only done that, I think, 9% of the time, 8 or 9% of the time in 2020. So he's not taking a whole lot of shots down the field. And does he get back to targeting Jamison Crowder because of such a bad game last week? I don't know. It's tough to say, but I do know it's a better matchup on the perimeter against the Raiders than it is in the slot, but again, it's just there's so many questions about that Jets team, the wide receivers in general. I would just play Boyd and just hope for the best. Let's see. Deontay Johnson or Terry McLaurin? McLaurin. The matchup against the Steelers is not bad. I tell people don't. It's almost like it's people scared to play guys against the Patriots. They're not as great as a defense, especially the pass defense. I'm worried about the running backs. I'm worried about Antonio Gibson. Not really worried about Terry McLaurin. They find ways to get the ball in his hands. I think that he's the only wide receiver in the league that's been targeted 7+ times in every game, if I'm not mistaken. And the Steelers have struggled against the pass. They've allowed 8.26 yards per target. So I just pulled up. It's slightly above the league average. And if you look at number 1 wide receivers that are actually targeted, they score fantasy points. So it's not a bad matchup. Let's see here. Drop 1, Jerry Jeudy, Brashad Perriman, Jacoby Myers. Probably Perriman. Probably. I'd actually look at the schedule. When I write the primer, I'm so focused on the 1 week thing, where Dan Harris actually does a great job. He does a trade chart every single week. Well, I don't think he's doing it anymore, but in season he does, and he always looks forward to the matchups. I don't know if he's still doing it or not. I wish I knew. But he always looks forward to like the best matchups, because we're at the point in the year where that stuff matters more than anything, because we know the matchups now. It's not like strength of schedule before the season starts. It's like we know now. So I'd probably want to look at that before stating, but just at first glance, I'd probably say Perriman. Noah, need to start to Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Devontae Booker. So Booker's definitely one of them, and I would probably play Gibson over Clyde Edwards-Helaire just because. So if I knew Edwards was going to play, if I knew he was going to play tonight, I'd be like, start him. But we don't, because he's a game time decision that they're going to make sure he can get through workouts, and he's had a stomach virus, something. I don't know. He's missed practice. It's worrisome. I think you just have to play Gibson and Booker and hope for the best. It stinks, though, because I would have rather played Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Juan asks, should I play Derek Carr or wait for Big Ben? He's questionable. He's questionable, but he's expected to play. This one's a risky one, right? Last week, I believed in Derek Carr. I wanted to play him against Atlanta. That hurt. Obviously, it hurt a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that are afraid to play him because of what happened last week. I don't think that we should let 1 week dictate how we feel about a player. I think he had a bad game, and I think everybody's entitled to that. And then you look at this matchup against the Jets, and you say, well, this is a bounce back spot. No Josh Jacobs means the run game probably not going to be as strong without him, so they should lean on Derek Carr a little bit more. But again, looking at the rankings, you have to take risk and reward in there, and we know Roethlisberger's floor has been extremely safe all year, and that's why I have Roethlisberger 1 spot higher than Derek Carr. I have Roethlisberger at 12, Carr at 13. I could see starting Derek Carr over Roethlisberger, but I'd probably stick with Roethlisberger. I really that's just me personally. I have 0 issue if you wanted to play Carr though. All right, pick 2: Gallman, Zeke, Booker. Booker's definitely one, and then the other one between Gallman and Zeke is really tough. Man, because we don't know about Baltimore. We don't know about the injuries they have on the defensive side of the ball right now, because that game is still 2 days away. And this is like unprecedented territory where we never have that stuff, right? We don't know. If I knew that they were without their 2 top interior linemen, I would say Ezekiel Elliott is a much better start than usual. And that's what's making me want to say Ezekiel Elliott over Gallman. And I think that's where I'm going to lean. Gallman's been so good in even bad matchups as of late. Like, if you look over the last, I think, 5 weeks or something like that, he's a top 10 running back. He's been really good in tough matchups too. But now with Colt McCoy under center, I think it worries me just a little bit more. He has no mobility. Daniel Jones at least presented something where defenses had to account for that. So I'll probably go with Zeke and Booker. Let's see. Bernard. Oh, it disappeared. I'm sorry. Dana asks, do I trust Michael Thomas for PPR, or should I play Landry? I would play Michael Thomas. I like Landry this week, but not more than Thomas. Shannon asks, PPR bench Julio for Keenan Allen and Kupp. I would bench Julio for Keenan Allen. As for Kupp, that one's really close. I don't know if I would bench him for Kupp. It's close, but I think I would play Julio and Keenan Allen. I think, yeah. Giovanni asks, Gesicki or Hurst? Goffett, Taysom. All right. So Gesicki or Hurst is the first question. Man, if it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, I would have said Gesicki, but it's not, so I can't. So I guess I'll go with Hayden Hurst there. I don't like Hayden Hurst's matchup against New Orleans. It's not a very good one, but New Orleans, I mean, with Julio in the lineup, Hayden Hurst has been better. So that's basically where we're hoping happens. And then as for Goff or Taysom Hill, I would play Taysom Hill. Much higher floor. On the ceiling, I like Goff more than most this week. I have him at 14. But Goff has been so unpredictable. Like, he's a guy that could just show up and just have a bust game. Like, he played against Seattle a couple weeks ago where it seemed like a smash spot. And he threw for like 302 yards or something like that, but no touchdowns. So it really dragged you down because he offers no mobility. So if he has a down week passing the ball, it just totally lets you down. That's why Taysom Hill makes a lot of sense. Kyle asked, let's see. Nope, sorry, Kyle. That is like way too many players there. Narrow it down, buddy. Mellon asked, Phillip Rivers or Matty Ice? I have Rivers higher right now. New Orleans has started to look like the defense we thought they would be. Basically, when the year started, we thought New Orleans was going to be a team set for a Super Bowl run because they had a very, very good offense. We figured that, Breeze might take a step back, but that defense was getting better and better. They looked like crap to start the year, but they turned things around. It does help that Julio's coming back. It does help that Janoris Jenkins is out. Janoris Jenkins is out for them. Yeah, I have them back to back. I have Rivers at 15, Matt Ryan at 16. That's so close. I feel the same way about him, honestly. I mean, Phillip Rivers has much better matchup, much better. But also, Rivers, they could choose to throw the ball a ton. That game has a high over-under, though. The total on that game, let me see what it came down to. I know it dropped. Let me see what it came down to. It is at 50.5. It's still a high total for that game. I'm going to play Phillip Rivers. I'm just going to go there. Whereas the Falcons-Atlanta, that game is at 45.5. And Atlanta's getting 3 points. So their implied team total is, 21, 22 points? Let's see. PPR, Snell or Chark? I think I'd risk it. Honestly, Ben, understand from the bottom of my heart, I don't want to let you down here. I think that I might want to risk it with Chark there. Washington has not been a good matchup in general for fantasy points to score against, with whether it be wide receivers, running backs. It's just not it's not a high scoring matchup for opposing offenses. Snell is fine. He's fine. Chark is that guy that you're like, I know there's a chance that he ends up with like 3 catches for like 40 yards. And you're like, I should have started Snell. But in a PPR format, you're getting the benefit of a wide receiver. Like, that's where the wide receivers get a bump over running backs because they're obviously targeted more. Snell is not heavily used in the passing game. Chark just has such a ceiling in this game against Minnesota. That game has a high total, higher than I thought it would be, to be honest. That one is at 51. That's a high total. So I think I would go with Chark. It's really close, though. So, Ben, if you want to play it safe, you could play Snell. But if you want to sacrifice a little bit you want to take on a little bit of risk to get that reward, I have no issue playing Chark. Luke asks, start to Julio. Okay, I'm sorry, Luke. There's too many players there. I'm trying, guys, try and narrow your questions down to 2 or 3 players. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. Cody, Dobbins, Gallman, Julio, pick one. I'll go Dobbins. It's very close, but yeah. All right, so let's see. Gary asks, Julio, Gaskins, or Booker, full PPR? Man, I can't believe nobody wants to play Julio this week. It's really tough. Looking at these, Myles Gaskin or Devontae Booker, these are both guys that are getting 15-plus touches. I think Gaskin has the better matchup. There is a little bit more risk that you're taking because he's coming off, a 4 or 5 week injury now. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was removed from the injury report, which is a good thing. So I guess we'll take Gaskin and his 15-plus touches. But it sucks, man. So, Gary, find a way to get Julio in your lineup. There's got to be a wide receiver you could bench for him. I have Julio. For what it's worth, I'll let you guys know where I have him. Julio right now sits at number 8 in my rankings. Like, I'd play Julio over DeAndre Hopkins this week. Am I crazy? Probably, but not because of that. Let's see. Amanda asks, PPR, RB, pick 2, Kareem Hunt, Jonathan Taylor, or Booker. All right, so Jonathan Taylor and Booker are my choices. Kareem Hunt has been somewhat of a disappointment this year, and nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to sit there and say Kareem Hunt hasn't been all that. He's been fine. He's been a guy that you can play in a I don't want to say in a pinch. He's been basically a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 with Nick Chubb in the lineup. And ever since Chubb came back, it's been apparent that Chubb has been better than Hunt. Hunt didn't even do very well in the workhorse role. In this game against Tennessee, is it possible that they fall behind and that Kareem Hunt has a bigger role because he's used in the passing role? That's what people want to think. Yeah, that's what logic tells you. Say, okay, yeah, Kareem Hunt is the pass catching back. I posted this in the primer. I'm gonna look it up so I don't screw up the stat here. But Kareem Hunt does not have more than, I think, 3 targets. Or no, he does not have more than 3 receptions since back in week 1. He has never, this year at all, he has not topped 28 yards receiving. So when you look at his rushing totals and you're like, okay, anywhere from 46 to 86 yards most of the time, it's basically you're looking for a touchdown, to start him as anything more than a high-end RB3. Is it possible against Tennessee? I guess. But after Nick Chubb played the way he did last week and the way he's getting it done down in the goal line, I think they have to start considering going back to Chubb rather than Hunt in the red zone because Chubb's just been better. So I'd play Jonathan Taylor and Booker. Hunter asks, pick 3. Okay, there's way too many there, dude. Again, we have to narrow these down, guys. Need to PPR Hopkins, Ridley, and Jefferson. Oh, that dude. Oh, it sucks. So my rankings right now, I have it 11, 12, and 14 for those guys. So they're all guys that should be started. I mean, if I had to pick one to bench, I guess it'd be Jefferson, just because the Vikings, here's the reason. Vikings are averaging just 28 pass attempts per game. That's obviously worrisome. That's why we've seen Justin Jefferson finish games with 5 targets. It's not because he's not a good wide receiver. He's averaging more yards per route than anybody else in the NFL. So it's more about the routes that he's running, or not running, I should say, because they run the ball so much. Do you think the Jaguars are going to be able to hang with the Vikings? If the answer is absolutely not, they're going to fall behind 2 touchdowns and then that's it. That's when you're going to see Kirk Cousins not throw the ball a whole lot. That's my issue. I love Jefferson, and I think that he's a good play. I have him at 14, so it's not like I don't like him. But those other guys, I don't think you have those concerns. So if you wanted to play Jefferson over Hopkins, I don't think I'd blame you, considering Hopkins is going to see Jalen Ramsey, and Kyler Murray hasn't been very good lately. But that's a risk, man. Drake or Taylor in a PPR format, I would play Jonathan Taylor over Drake this week. Non-PPR, Zeke or Snell, I would play Zeke over Benny Snell. Anthony asks, pick 1, Devontae Booker or Cooper Kupp. I would play Booker. Yeah, it just feels safer. So when you're torn between those decisions, if you're legit torn, that's when you just lean towards the guaranteed touches. You just say, you know what? I'd rather be safe than sorry. And Booker is going to get 15 plus touches, maybe 20. Pittman or Chark? I would play Chark. AJ Brown or DeAndre Hopkins? I would play AJ Brown over DeAndre Hopkins this week. QB decision, Cam Newton, Jared Goff, or Matt Ryan? I would play Jared Goff of those. Let's see. Amanda asked, PPR pick 2, Hunt, Taylor, or Booker? I would play Taylor and Booker. I think I already answered that one. Hey, Tags. Have PPR, David Johnson, Gurley, or Latavius Murray? Oof, I don't like either. I don't like any of them, but I suppose it's David Johnson, considering the targets for the Texans have to go somewhere. They have to figure out where they're going to go. David Johnson's a phenomenal receiver. Do they split him and Duke Johnson on the field together? I think so. It's not a good matchup against Indianapolis, but you're getting a running back that's going to get 15 touches, whereas Gurley, coming off an injury, we don't know what's going on there. We really have no idea. It's a terrible matchup against New Orleans. And then Latavius Murray, He's like the touchdown or bust guy, right? But Atlanta has been very, very good on the ground against running back, so I don't think this is a great matchup for Latavius. Tony asks, full PPR, flex spot, Devontae Booker, J.K. Dobbins, Debo, pick one. Booker, Dobbins, Debo. I would play Dobbins. I'd play Dobbins over Booker. Yeah. Gregory Way, start two, David Johnson, Kareem Hunt, or Frank Gore. This is where I would lean Kareem Hunt over those guys. I already talked about David Johnson's matchup. Frank Gore, I'd probably go with David Johnson just because he's tied to a better offense in a game that has a higher total. Because I have him and Frank Gore in a similar tier because they both should be getting about 15 to 18 touches. It's just which ones has a better opportunity to score, and I think it's David Johnson. Let's see here. Working my way down. I'm going to answer as many as I can for the next couple minutes. Brant tags Patrick, Tim Patrick, Hilton, or Kirk. I have T.Y. Hilton ranked the highest of those this week. Joshua, Derek Carr, Matt Ryan, 6-point passing touchdowns. I'd play Derek Carr. Standard pick one, Brandon Cooks, Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley. Hood Media, Booker, Gaskin, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Gibson. That was too many. Hood. We're supposed to narrow it down, but I already read it. So I'm going to go Myles Gaskin there. Deebo or Booker, I would play Booker. Allen Robinson or Booker, full PPR with the knee. Yeah, that's the concern with Allen Robinson. It's like I don't know how much I need to downgrade him. I probably should. I don't know if it's just like precautionary. I don't know what's going on with that. So I guess probably play Booker. It's safer. Pick two, including one running back. Snell. Oh, there's too many people. Francisco, start Pittman or Aguilar. I would play Pittman. Let's see. Chark, Gore, or Boyd at flex and full PPR. I'd go with, let's see. Ooh. If you're looking for a floor, I would go with Gore. If you're looking for a ceiling, I would go with Chark. Evil Doughboy, Sterling Shepard, or Corey Davis. That one's close. I have them in the same exact tier. It's like literally flip a coin. I think Sterling Shepard is probably the safer floor play. I think Corey Davis might have a higher ceiling. I'm going to go with Sterling Shepard, I think. I'm going to look at my rankings just to verify that. Yes, I have Sterling Shepard at 27, Corey Davis at 28. So I have Shepard. Let's see. Bill asked Phillip Rivers or Kyler Murray. I'd play Kyler and hope for the best. Good morning. Let's see. Lamar Jackson or Kirk Cousins. I'd play Lamar Jackson against the Cowboys. John asked Hopkins or Ridley. I have Ridley one spot higher. So I'd Ridley. Let's see. Ebron, Perriman, or Patrick. I would go with... Oh, that one's tough. I don't like Patrick's matchup. Ebron against Washington. Tight ends do get targeted against them, but that's more based on the fact that wide receivers don't. I'll go Perriman. Hope for the bomb. Jason asked Drake, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Beasley in flex full PPR. I want to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I just don't know if he's going to play. I guess Drake. I guess that's where I'm going to go. Lamb or Lazard standard. I'll go Lamb. Hope for the best because Baltimore is dealing with some injuries. Jimmy Smith might not play. Tramon Williams, their backup slot cornerback, he's out for this game. So there's definitely some question marks there. DFS Cash, have you changed your mind about Dalvin without Madison? Yeah, yes and no. It's still difficult to get up there in price, but this slate has got so much value on it. You can pay for Dalvin if you want to. I think they're going to share the workload a little bit. I don't know how much they can though. Like, are they going to just trust Kirk to throw the ball? And this game is interesting for what it's worth. I actually made a few DFS lineups where I'm actually going to stack the crap out of the Vikings pass catchers and then come back with Chark on the other side. But yeah, this is fun, guys. Week 13, wow. We have week 14 coming up. Fantasy playoffs, guys. Fantasy playoffs are next week. I will be here for you guys. I will be here through week 16. I want to help you guys win those fantasy championships. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Click the like button if you haven't. If you enjoyed the stream today, if you learned anything, we appreciate it. Seriously, thank you. And the best of luck in your Week 13 matchups. Obviously, I want to see you next week, so hopefully I made some great decisions for you. Go out there and get them. Until next time. Oh, and don't forget, Yates. Yates is starting a stream. Yates is going to go answer questions for a full hour. So, yeah, go and check out Yates' stream if I didn't get to your question. But thank you guys again. Until next time. Lights out.